Well, here we are again for another update on employment law. There's been some new legislation introduced, ironically, on the 1st of April 2016. And what's that new law do? Well, what it does, it introduces the requirement for employers to record hours of work for salaried employees. Totally ridiculous, actually impractical, and it really can't work in most cases. Some cases it will. Now, the soft bit of it all is, if you do regular hours, so you work from 8 to 5, well, there's no requirement to record every hour. But you do 1 hour. 1 hour outside your usual hours, and then that employee's hours are going to be recorded by the employer. The employer is going to be held accountable. If the employer doesn't do it right, guess what? $10,000 penalty. That's the maximum for an individual employer. That's a person who owns a business. If it's a company, it could be $20,000. That's for failing to keep the record of salary employees' hours. Totally ridiculous in my view. Anyway, this law, why did they bring it into being? Now, my understanding was that the Labour Inspectorate were having difficulties in imposing the law on individual unscrupulous employers, and they are out there. Believe me, they're there, that put people on a minimum wage salary. So that means they're on the minimum wage and for an 8-hour day to do a salary. So at the end of the week, they got a set salary. But the facts are they made them work over 8 hours. And those guys took a case to the Labour Inspectorate. The Labour Inspectorate go, oh, it's too hard. We don't have a record of the hours they worked. So they've said, everybody, from now on, all employers must keep the hours of work. Ridiculous. Let me just give you an example. You're a sales rep. You go out socially on the evening, or perhaps you go down to the school to watch some sport, and you bump into somebody. And he happens to ask you, as people do, what do you do for a living? Well, I do this, this, this. Well, just so happens I'm looking for that. Is there any chance we can get together and actually do a deal on this? The next thing, there's a big chat ensued. That salesperson actually will have to record that they worked during that time because they're actually doing work. Now, do you think our politicians would be awake to that? It's ridiculous to charge or to identify every hour worked. I don't know of an employee yet who knows about this law. Everyone I've spoken to goes, what? I've never heard this before. It's impossible. It's not. But the facts are every employee can enforce the law on the employer. So if they have a grumble with the employer, they have a personal grievance, I would say that every personal grievance now will probably attack the employer on failing to keep an accurate record of salary employees' hours. Look, it's inevitable. The employers are not going to keep an actual record of hours. Some will. It's going to cost them hours and hours of time. The employee hours of time, the employer hours of time. And does the government care? They don't seem to. Well, where's our New Zealand's productivity going to go? Even lower. And whose fault is that? Well, it's the wisdom of our government. Mr. Government, Prime Minister, anyone else, next time before you introduce a new law, come and talk to me. Come and talk to the small employers representative, because we will tell you what it's like. Don't go and listen to the big lobbyists that hover around your government all the time on Parliament House. They're not interested in small businesses. Do you know, folks, 97% of all enterprises in New Zealand employ less than 20 people. This law will hurt them the most. And guess what? Our government doesn't talk to them.